Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather. Welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Weather. It is May the 20th. It is Tuesday, and it's a little after 8 p.m., 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time here to be exact. Tonight's video update, I should say. Today's pretty much over. Tonight's video update is sponsored by Metal Magic in Washington. You can give Chad a call at 698-8555 for all of your paintless dent repair needs. Folks, they have the traveling hail team. They do a great job. They're PDR Nation certified. So in a nutshell, folks, when you take your work to them, you know that you're going to get it done right, and you know that you're going to get it done well to the best of their ability. And they are good at what they do, folks. You can see some of the pictures down here below. They are very good at what they do. So write that number down. Call Chad whenever you have that paintless dent repair need, and tell them Southern Indiana Weather sent you. All right, satellite and radar into motion. We've got a cold front that's up to our north here, which I'll show you on the surface map here in a minute. And that's starting to fire off some storms up here. In fact, if we just take the radar off of here, you can actually see there are some severe thunderstorm warnings that go along with this that have been firing up, along with some watches as well. That is all going to stay pretty much up to our north, and tonight we're not going to have to deal with anything, just some high clouds really for us to deal with tonight as far as everything else goes, but not too much to worry about. Tomorrow is a different story. Let's talk about our slight risk for severe weather, and that's really what I want to focus on in tonight's Beyond the Weather video, is that we do have a shot for severe weather tomorrow. So what exactly is the main threats that we're going to have to deal with, and what can we expect? Slight risk for severe weather, as I said, encompasses all of us. If we hover over to the probabilistic, you can see really the southeast corner of the state of Indiana is in that upper end 30% slight risk, and the rest of us are in the low end slight risk 15%. So again, we all stand the shot of severe weather, but this is targeting really from points Indianapolis down to Louisville, and then points eastward into Cincinnati, and then south of the Columbus, Ohio area are in that upper end slight risk, and that extends, it looks like about as far as maybe the U.S. the State Road 37 corridor coming down from Indy, Bedford, Paoli, and then on to the east from the way things look just by observing this right now. Now, this is all due to a cold front that's going to be stalling out in our area. Here's what the surface map looks like right now. Let's look at this before we dive into some of the model data. By tomorrow morning, this is what we can expect. The cold front starts to position itself more along the lines of northern Indiana. It slowly advances. Here we are by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and here we are finally by 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And you can see the cold front is still well to our north. All of the storms should fire along tomorrow along that cold front, and then start to slowly move to the southeast over our area. So we're going to have to watch out for this, but it looks like at this point in time now, it's looking like it could be a late evening thing rather than an afternoon thing for us, as was expected earlier today. This cold front doesn't move through into our area until really about 7 a.m. on Thursday morning now. So it really looks like this is going to be a very late evening and into the overnight threat for us from the way things are looking right now. And then, of course, the good thing about that is the later it gets, the less instability that we will have because of the daytime heating going down. All right, let's talk about what we can expect as far as severe weather goes. Remember that for severe weather, we basically need three things. And by the way, if you want to know more of the detail about this, you can go to southernindianaweather.com, click on blog and forecast discussions, and you can see all the blog and discussions and things that I have done over the time. I haven't done as many as I'd like to do. I'm trying to do more of those lately. I'm trying to do at least one or two on every severe weather event that we get. So I did this earlier today, and of course they've upgraded us into a moderate, not a moderate, but into an upper end slight risk for portions of the area. But you can go through this and you can look at some of the data a little bit more than what I do here in the video if you're so inclined to do that. But here's what I want you to see on here. Basically, there are three key ingredients that we need for severe weather. All right, we need instability, and that comes in the form of warmth and moisture. We need wind shear, so we need strong winds aloft, and we need some sort of a lifting mechanism. It can be a cold front, which in our case is exactly what it will be. It can be upper level disturbance, a low pressure, something towards that. So let's look at the data. First, let's take a look at instability. Now, instability numbers from the high resolution NAM are absolutely freaking insane tomorrow. We're talking values here upwards of 4,000 joules per kilogram, which these 4,000 plus units of CAPE, this is almost bordering on the hide for your life type of category. I'm a little skeptical to see that. With the high resolution NAM, dew point surge into the 70s. I'm not sure we're going to get our dew points into the 70s tomorrow. That seems to be a little over aggressive on the moisture. Now the GFS model moderates it quite a bit. As you can see, the GFS model is not nearly as aggressive with this, but we do get between 2 and 3,000, maybe up to 3,500 at most on the way most of this is looking. So, that's certainly better than 4,000 to 4,500, but nonetheless, basically what instability is, we're looking at CAPE, convective available potential energy. This is fuel for the fire. Whenever you have severe storms and they get into an environment that has high amounts of CAPE like this, it's like putting kerosene on a campfire. It just explodes. And with this type of CAPE, you could expect explosive growth for severe thunderstorms if all of the other parameters are in place. So instability tomorrow, short, sweet, and to the point, not a problem with instability. Let's take a look at wind energy. Here we are about the time the storms would roll through tomorrow night, which I'll show you. We'll time it out on future radar here in a second. And remember, to get those strong winds, to get organized severe weather, what we really want to see is about 35 to 40 knots of speed shear or better. That 35 to 40 knots is really the minimum that we need to get for severe weather. And you can see we're borderlining the minimum. Here we are looking at winds at about 18,000 feet up, and you've got maybe 40 knots or so over most of the state. So it's kind of on the lower end of that threshold. And if we take a look at our bulk shear, which bulk shear is basically looking at the change in wind speed as you go from the surface to about 18,000 feet up in the atmosphere. You can see, again, we're only at about 40 knots or so, and here's Indiana. It's a little hard to see, but just take my word for it. This is roughly around 40 knots, 35 to 40 knots, so it's on the very low end of that. Here's one thing that's a bit concerning to me, and if we take a look at down here at winds at about 4,000 feet or so, we're taking a look at the low-level jet, and what you see is it's largely absent. We've only got about 20 to 25 knots of a low-level jet over us, and that is subpar wind energy at best. What the low-level jet does is it allows those winds that are high up into the atmosphere to be translated more readily down to the surface during a severe thunderstorm. You can get severe weather without a strong low-level jet, but it's just one obstacle that has to be overcome. With a high amount of CAPE, it may be of instability in the CAPE measurement that we looked at may be overcome, but this is a knock in the bad direction. And whenever you're only talking wind energy going to be about 35 or 40 knots, you're on the low end of that threshold of what you need already anyway. So the bottom line, wind energy is marginal for this event as far as I'm concerned. Plenty of instability, but we have marginal instability. Now the other thing that we said we needed here is some sort of a lifting mechanism, and of course that's in the form of a cold front. But let's back it up here. About the time that these storms would start to fire off in our area, the cold front is well to our north. So that means the storms are going to initiate around the Indianapolis area and start to move south. By the time they get here, we could be talking about really late at night. Let's time that out. Let's go back here. Let me take off all the data here that we see on this, and let me put on the model data here. All right, let me back this up in time just a little bit. What I want to show you here is the high resolution NAM and its future radar product for tomorrow. So here we are. And let me zoom in on the state of Indiana a little bit more to make it a little bit easier to see what we would be potentially dealing with. That ought to be pretty good. So here we are by 2 p.m. and you can see absolutely nothing on future radar. Let's go advance forward in hours. 3 p.m. Here's 4 p.m. Storms are starting to fire. Remember, that cold front by that time is still north of Indianapolis. There you go. The storms are starting to fire north of Indianapolis. They'll eventually start to move their way south. Here we are by 5 p.m. Starting to congeal more into a little bit more of a linear fashion. Here you go. 6 p.m. 7 p.m. Here's 8 p.m. Well, actually, no, this is 7 p.m. at night here. I've gotten ahead of myself a little bit. All right. Here is 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., here's 11 p.m., and then finally here's midnight, 1 a.m., which is about as far as the model goes out right now on this future radar view. So it gives you an idea of how this is moving through. Let me back it up and put this down again. So here we are. The line is just starting to maybe take shape up here around 6 p.m. or so, somewhere around in here. By the time we get to about 9 or 10 p.m., that's when the line, if it, according to the high resolution NAM, would start to push into the area. And then you can see as it goes on, it still maintains a decent little high reflectivity values as shown by the yellows and the reds. But eventually it starts to fizzle out the later we get down into the night. And so that's exactly the situation that we are going to be facing tomorrow night with the front well up to our north, even though we've got such high instability values around here and we've got wind energy that is It's not really subpar, but it's marginal for a severe weather threat. It looks to me like the greatest threat, if the high resolution NAM is to be believed here, doesn't come in until well after dark. I mean, the sun sets now at about 8:50 or so Eastern time now. So if it's going to be 9 before it's realistically up around the Bloomington area or so, and then racing to our south, it's not going to get here into the southern part of the state really until it's getting dark. And of course, that's going to put a hamper on the severe weather. So now much could change. The overnight models may do something completely different with it and speed up this timing, but it looks like it's slowing down right now. And of course, that's good for us. With it slowing down, the severe weather threat would lessen somewhat. But as far as it's concerned, you can even see that here on the future radar. If I just kind of, well, let me get the right thing here, put it on the right one. As we race through this, you notice they're moving from the northwest down to the southeast, and you can see that it looks like the greatest threat here, the biggest complex, occurs over portions of southwest Indiana, and then moves down, and it moves down earlier in the evening hours than what it does for us. Here in the southwest corner of the state, we do get that rain finally move through along with that, but it is really late. So that leads me to think that the greatest threat for severe weather would probably be in this corridor right here, which is exactly where the SPC has that 30% upper end slight risk. Now, that doesn't mean to say that this area of the state here has absolutely no risk. We certainly do have a severe weather risk, just don't think it's as strong based on the way the data looks right now. So that's the way things stand as far as this right now. There are some other future radars that we could take a look at here. If I get on the right one, here is what one other future radar, the ARW, which does seem to also have a pretty decent handle on this as well. And you can see that the majority of that convection here, it is a much quicker speed, but this was a model run initialized much earlier, many hours ago. So the NAM was a lot incorporating newer data. But at this time, the ARW sped it up quite a bit, but the majority of the convection here and the severe potential was, of course, over in this portion of the state where, again, the upper end slight risk goes. For the southwest corner of the state, nothing really going on, and that's pretty much the story of what the ARW says. So we'll have to monitor it tomorrow and see what it does. But basically, if you live closer toward the Louisville area, I think you're under the gun more so than if you live closer to the Evansville area on that side of the state. So Vincennes, Princeton, Terre Haute, maybe around the Jasper area, Shoals, Lagodi area, that sort of quadrant right in there, Washington area, probably less at risk than, say, from State Road 37 on to the east. So we will say maybe Bedford, Paoli, and then maybe Salem and Scottsburg, New Albany area, Clarksville, Jeffersonville, areas around in that, and Madison. Areas along that would certainly have a greater severe weather threat based on the data that I'm seeing right now. All right. So that's the way it stands. Let's go to southernindianaweather.com real quick, and we'll end this by taking a look at your Eubler Sun 7-day forecast. Mostly clear out there right now. We may get a few clouds come in tonight, but it's not going to be too bad. Partly cloudy at best tonight, most likely down to about 65 for your low. And then it's going to be windy again tomorrow. We had a pretty windy day today. The winds have died down just a little bit, but not a whole lot. But tomorrow, again, southwest winds 10 to 15 miles per hour here at the surface. And we're looking at high warm around 85 degrees again tomorrow. Partly cloudy skies, the chance of thunderstorms. Again, strong to severe storms are possible. Then we get 20% chances as we end Thursday and Friday. Then the rain comes to an end. But look at this. We've still got warm temperatures, really as far as the eye can see here. So that's a good thing. We've got plenty of warm temperatures around the area, but we got a little bit of severe weather potential that we got to deal with tomorrow, and then after that, well, we'll see. As far as timing this out, again, it looks late in the evening, so keep it right here to Southern Indiana Weather, folks. I'll have more updates on this in the morning and throughout the day tomorrow as well. And, of course, if anything does fire, warnings and things will be posted to here as best we can possibly can to keep up with it. Doesn't look like a huge outbreak to me at this point right now. Now, that could change tomorrow again, but at this point, doesn't look like a mega outbreak to me. Maybe a few warnings, and the greatest threat as I see it right now is probably going to be damaging straight line winds and maybe up to quarter size inch hail, but the tornado threat looks very low with this. It looks like more of a damaging wind threat than it does anything at this point. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll be monitoring it. Keep it right here to Southern Indiana Weather for more coverage on this. That's it for this edition of Beyond the Weather, folks. Hope you have enjoyed this. We'll see you tomorrow morning for the next edition of the Quickcast. For Southern Indiana Weather, I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite. Have a great night, folks. Take care and stay safe.